Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Email Never Sleeps. I'm Andrew Kordek, and I am actually really happy to introduce my guest today. We were chatting a little bit before about this, about his company and stuff. And so I want to introduce you to Josh Kropkof, who is the CEO of the email agency. Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company.
For sure. Thanks, Andrew, by the way, for having me on. Really happy to be here. Um, my name is Josh. I started this company, the email agency, with my brother a few years ago, back in 2018. And it was definitely kind of a struggle at first to kind of get it off the ground. But once we did, we were able to steadily grow it over the last 5, 6 years now. And basically, we do email marketing and SMS for e-commerce brands, companies that sell physical products online. And to date, we've actually worked with, we've developed email strategies for over, I think it's like 118 different companies now. And we added like a ton more just in the last month. So I don't know the latest number, but somewhere in there. And then niches is getting up close to 100 different niches now too, which is really cool. And we've been privileged to work with some of the good brands, like some pretty big brands out there. I don't know if you've ever heard of Craft Sportswear, but they always show up in the Olympics because they sponsor a lot of gold medal Olympic athletes. And we've also worked with Foundation Building Materials, which is a big corporation here in the United States with locations all over the place. And a lot of small companies as well. So we've been doing this for a few years, and we're planning on growing and continuing to do it. And excited to talk about email. I think we do have sort of a few interesting stances that maybe are different from a lot of agencies out there. So excited to talk about that.
Nice. And we'll put all of your contact information and your agency's location in when this video is, so everybody you can all check out the email agency with Josh. So I think the topic for today's, we've got an interesting topic, and this might hit a couple of chords with people, but the topic is, what is one thing that really makes or potentially can make your email program fail or not do very well? And I've got a lot of strong opinions about this. I know that probably you do as well. I'm curious. Let's have you kick it off. What's the one thing that you think brands are doing today that maybe is hurting their email program?
So I will say that fail is maybe a strong word, right? And we could debate about that, but I will take the position that the number one reason that a brand's email program could fail is that they are not using what I would call a direct response, personality driven email program.
Okay.
And I think a lot of brands sort of overlook this foundational piece, and they really focus on a lot of the more, in the weeds stuff. At how to code emails a specific way to get a certain action, or the different types of segmentation and personalization and all of that. But I think that there's this fundamental principle that has worked in advertising for a really long time. And I think now even more so, there's a need for this because people really want to connect with people. And a lot of people are just bombarded. Everybody is bombarded with marketing all day long. And I think that we trend towards this need to feel like, what, this person or this brand isn't just marketing at me, but they're actually talking to me. And so I think a lot of brands miss this, and they kind of are afraid to even send an email that maybe comes from a person and not just the brand speaking. So that's my overall opinion on kind of the big thing people are doing wrong right now.
And I agree, right? I think there's this notion that I think through the pandemic and through the last 4 or 5 years of just at least seeing how brands are responding to their customers, there's this humanization aspect, right? To all of this. People want to feel connected to the brand. They want to feel that there's real people behind it. They want to feel as if they know them as a buyer or a persona, not just a persona, but someone as a buyer, and sort of treats them as such. An email. And so I'm going to agree with that, but I'm also going to kind of inject my opinion of why I think brands today are hurting themselves. And I think you're right. The fail is a very strong word, because most email programs today are successful. But I
Mhm.
look at an email program and say, how can we make it more successful? And the more I think you talk to brands and I talk to brands, it fundamentally boils back to resistance to change. And if you think about how email was done, and I use that in air quotes, done 5, 10, 15 years ago, there's this notion that what we've done before in the past has always worked, and we can just evolve it a little bit.
Mhm.
And I've always talked about the starting out to sign up for an email. How hard is it? How easy is it? What am I told what I'm going to get? And then everything else sort of cascades from there, or their resistance to change on testing or doing that sort of stuff. So I'm going to lump it in to say the resistance to change is say, well, we've always done it this way. We've always seen this happen.
Yeah,
And then they become reactive instead of proactive to some of the changes that are happening in the marketplace. So your idea, I think, is phenomenal. But I'd love to have you unpack that just a little bit.
sure.
Tell me what you mean, and how do you work with brands, or how you feel brands should change their approach based off of what you just said.
For sure. Well, I have a quick story that I think answers the question, illustrates the point. So a few years back, this was like late 2019, early 2020, really like before the pandemic even. We got the opportunity to work with this pretty big company called Mix Tiles. I guess it's okay if I say them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a company that basically it's like an app on your phone where you can select pictures from your phone. The company will send you framed photos that you then put on your walls.
Right.
And it was really cool at the time because we had only worked with pretty small companies. We were still in our first year, really year and a half of being an email agency. And so most of the companies we worked with were like 6-figure companies, decent size, but relatively small team and things like that. And this company was at the time they were doing like 30 million a year or something, and they were growing, like they were becoming hugely popular, more and more people downloading the app. And they had just very basic email marketing in place. And it was all just so kind of standard. It was like very HTML driven, and really no personality or anything. The copy was just as basic as you could get.
Right.
No real message behind it. And they asked us, we want to know, what can we do to make this better? And
Sure.
so we had an idea, and when we proposed it to them, they were a little hesitant. We said, why don't we try some emails that come from a person? And at first we wanted to make it from the CEO, and he was like, I don't really want to be the guy behind this. So we said, well, what if we created a character?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, all right, let's see what you come up with. So we read all the different testimonials and all the reviews people have been sending in on the products, and we created this character who was kind of a composite of these different stories. And we called her Colleen. And we did this test, and this is the thing, is they were like, we don't think this is going to work, but we'll give you an opportunity to run a test.
Right.
So we created a new welcome sequence for them that people get when they sign up for the app, because they had this issue where all these people would sign up for the app and then never purchase, never go through with the process. That was their big sticking point. So we wrote 10 plain text emails from Colleen.
Uh-huh.
Nothing, like they all were not super long, but just like a paragraph or two from
Uh-huh.
her, either telling a story about the product, or like just the benefits of it, and calls to action to get them to buy. And they said, all right, let's test this. At first they were like hesitant, and they said, we're going to give you 5% of traffic. 5% of traffic, right? So all there's 95% going to theirs, 5% going to ours. And they started to notice, well, the emails we set up were getting open more, they were getting clicked more.
Yeah.
And the placed order rate was higher. So they said, all right, let's do a fair test. So they started increasing the traffic. They eventually did a full 50-50 split, and they ran it for 100 days. And at the end of the 100 days, the emails we created won by miles. It was 83% higher revenue on the
Oh.
side that we did. Click-through rates were higher, open rates were higher. Ours were getting replies and responses. There was just all kinds of things. And I felt like for us, it was a big moment. And I tell this story a lot because it kind of proved to us that we are doing something different in the industry, that like a lot of brands don't want to do this. And by the way, I don't recommend always using plain text or anything. It was just for the sake of this test.
Yeah.
We wanted that extreme sort of comparison or
Yeah.
contrast, I guess. Um, so interestingly enough, though, we worked with them for a few months, and then they got rid of us. They wanted to keep everything in house, and they kind of backed away from everything we had done.
Yeah.
And I thought about it later and realized, it's to what you're saying. Like, it is really hard to get an organization to change. Like here, they admitted to us. They said, you know what, like this did work. We love what you guys did. You did prove us wrong, but
Mhm.
we're still not going to go through with it. Like we still wanted, and they had their own, they actually grew. It was crazy. During that time period, we were with them a few months. They went from being an 8-figure company to a 9-figure company. Their team exploded. They like 10x the size of their team. So of course now they got their own email and marketing department in house,
Sure.
and they brought everything in. But it's just an interesting, because I've heard a lot of people say that same sentiment, Andrew, which is like, yeah, companies can be really resistant to changing anything in their marketing, even when it works better, even when they see the proof. They're like,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
stigma for whatever reason.
You mentioned something really interesting, and I think a lot of people today entering into email marketing, people that have been around for quite some time, the use of testing. But you said something like, "We tested this for 100 days,"
Yeah.
and in theory, when you hear of the word, well, we need to test and learn and innovate and iterative innovation, or whatever we want to call it, right? Sometimes people feel like, oh, well, we only need to test this for 1 cent, or for maybe 3 cents, or for maybe a,
Yeah.
right? Kudos to you for saying, look, we need to put this in for quite some time and do a really apples to apples comparison, right? And so
Mhm.
for everybody that's out there, if you hear the word testing, you don't need to draw out some huge long test plan and testing every day or every week, or, sometimes a long tail test, and I've done long tail tests too, prove the point more so than just a couple of tests to say, well, this worked, and this worked. And I think that's great. And I've heard of the company before, but I'm gonna go sign up. I want to see. Um,
I don't think ours is, it won't be our welcome sequence
it
these
won't be
days.
well. That's okay,
Yeah.
right? That's okay.
They did
And
it
I
for a
think
while though, but
right, but to your point, right? This
yeah.
whole resistance to change, and I don't know if it's coming from the top down, or this whole like, even though I always use this story, even though Blue Button worked more and got twice as much revenue than Yellow Button, you've got somebody going, well, Yellow Button's better. I like Yellow
Yeah,
Button better. And
of
sometimes we
course.
need to follow our theory, is that you, me, even the company is not in charge of the program in and itself. It's how their customers engage and the
Yeah.
things that they do. And I was just on a call earlier, and someone said, I can't believe some of the stuff that actually works,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like we think it's going to work, but it doesn't. But I want to add a little something onto what I said, and then I want to do a sort of a quick wrap up.
Sure.
Um, I look at email programs today on the surface, right? Until I get in and start really getting my hands dirty with data and stuff. But I think, more importantly, and what's way important to me, is the experience of informing the customer what they're looking to get. So it starts with the first time I sign up for email, how difficult it is. What's my welcome email look like? Are you smacking me over the head with an offer or something else, without really taking the time to see the let the person get to know your brand, right? We
Hmm.
all think, well, they should know my brand. Well, no, not really, right? And so there's this sort of setup that we need to do. And I think that's sometimes what's lost with marketers, right? Is marketers need to say, oh, well, I understand the brand. I know if I sell shoes or socks, right? I know my brand really well, and therefore my customers should know my brand really well. Well, there's different nuances, to this. And I think the companies that take the time, spend the time to say, here's why we are different, not just because we do this, that, or the other thing, but they
Hmm.
invoke this sort of humanization into email, and then not be resistance uh, to that change. So I always set this up, Josh. Let's say you have 100 marketers in front of you,
Okay.
and they each are struggling in different sets of their program. And we all know that that holiday is coming up, or their busy seasons are coming up. Is there something that you can provide, or is there a golden nugget that you can provide to say, what is one thing you would focus on for any brand? And it could be anything. I'm just curious, if you had these 100 people in front of you, what would you say?
Um, I think something that maybe is overlooked a lot from email marketers, I guess, would be the value of the what you can learn from the people on your list.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and I'm continually surprised because I always feel like it's trending. More people are doing this now, but then pretty much every client and everyone that I tell to do this, they're like, "Oh my God, I never thought of that," and then they're like shocked. But I always say, like, use email as an opportunity to ask questions
Yeah.
of the people on your list, and good questions, and get responses, and look at that. That's such good information. It's like the best direct marketing research that you could ever do. And every time that we're starting with a new client, it's one of the first things we do, where we have them do. And they always have the same reaction. They go, "Oh my God, like, I can't believe I've never done this," because they're shocked at what comes back. Like, they think, "Oh, no one's going to answer me," or people don't want to answer an email from a brand. They're not going to take it seriously. And then they get back people who've written a novel back to them with all this information. They get and then such a variety of responses. And it gives them ideas for the next product they're going to come out with, or the next campaign they're going to do, or how to do their marketing. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say, is like, it doesn't matter what type of company you have, what industry you're in.
Mhm.
Use email. As you got to remember, it is and I think Andrew, you certainly know this, a lot of people don't think about it, like, email is the most direct channel that you have.
Yep.
Period. It is the top communication channel in the world. It dwarfs everything else. There's 347 billion emails sent per day,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
text messages, it's only like 23 billion, which is still a ton. But can
Yeah.
you imagine, like, the
Yep.
proportion there? And it's like, we have this, and it's also largely unregulated for now, email, and it's because of its infrastructure, it'll probably stay that way for
Yeah.
quite some time. And it's just this gold mine opportunity. So I think it's, don't do everything with email marketing the way that you think it should be done based on what you see the big corporations doing, because
Mhm.
they're not always going to, I mean, they're probably wrong.
Yep.
um, think about how you can use the channel to learn things about your customer, and use that information to come up with better marketing. So I think that's a bottom line. That's my biggest tip.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I'm going to add on to that. My final thoughts are this. If I had 100 marketers in front of me and they're all struggling with different things, I'd say, first of all, you need to tunnel vision yourself for just a moment in on your brand. Don't worry about what other people are doing or your competitors are doing, or comparing yourself in benchmark studies to somebody else, right? That's either going to prop you up or bring you down. A lot of people ask for, well, how does my open rate or click through rate compare to mine? Who cares, right?
Mm.
And then the second thing I would say is, we've got a lot of technologies out there today that are the bright shiny objects, and that's okay if you feel like you can sort of test into that.
Mm.
Focus in on your current subscribers, your current customers, whatever you're selling, and ask yourself, how can I get more out of them, and how can I treat them differently in that somebody that's been with me for a long time, that's a great customer segmentation, versus somebody that hasn't purchased or only done one purchase before, and come up with a messaging strategy for each one of those types of people, because they're going to notice that difference. So
Mm.
instead of focusing on others and the things that are around you, focus on yourselves. And when you do that, I think brands can become more successful, because you're not just competing for inbox attention of your competitors. You're also competing for inbox attention of Aunt Mary's Facebook post, and
Mm.
Josh is forwarding to me about, hey, what's going on in my fantasy football league, or a girls' night out. You're competing for attention, and so you have to sort of feel your way out of how do you draw better attention to your brand. And to your point, right, the studies and getting feedback from people, man, that's awesome, right? That's the kind of market research that you need so you can better understand. And it may not be what you think it is, or it may
Right.
be. Like, you just never know.
Yeah.
So with that, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to put Josh's all of his deets, where you can reach him, especially the email agency.com, I believe. And Josh, thanks for your time, man, and your insights. It's been one of the more enlightening email never sleeps. Thank you so much
Cool.
for attending, and we might have you on again in the future. So thanks again.
Would love to, man. Thank you, Andrew, for having me.
Thanks, everybody.